Suppose that you have identified one or more concepts that you would like to study. You've already come up with a research question and a preferred research strategy. Now you're ready to roll up your sleeves and get to work. So, what next? When you want to undertake some analysis, you have to answer for yourself two baseline questions. First, what do the main concepts mean in this context? Second, how do we measure the main concepts? First things first, let's talk about what the main concepts mean in a given context. I'll start with an example. My area is urban policy. I'm interested in studying phenomena that have to do with cities and urban areas. I might want to look at educational levels or income or use of public assistance or access to technology. Suppose I am interested in studying the concept of education. How do I define it? I might define my concept as the amount of knowledge and training acquired in school, or how long someone has been affiliated with the educational system, or the number or level of academic credentials earned. Do you see where I'm going with this? For most concepts that we can think of, we could come up with several alternative conceptual definitions. It just depends on what we are interested in. As a side note, instead of thinking about alternative conceptual definitions, you might find it useful to think about different dimensions of a concept. The next logical step is to devise an operational definition. The operational definition states in general terms how we are going to measure the concept as we have defined it. I'm going to cheat a bit by not committing myself to any of the conceptual definitions. An operational definition could be graduated from high school, reads at grade level, achieves standards set by the school district, attendance at school. As a practical matter, I am not going to have you march through concept, conceptual definition, operational definition, and then what comes next, the variable definition. Instead, I want you to understand the logic that we start with a big, broad idea and then narrow it down to something specific enough that we can study. If this all seems a bit confusing, or you could benefit from some further examples, choose Continue. Otherwise, feel free to jump ahead to a quick assessment to test your understanding of these concepts. What do we mean by the concept of social status? Wealth, which we could operationalize as whether an individual is a millionaire, or whether an individual owns a home, or for a country, the level of GDP per capita. Prestige, which we could operationalize as a professional title, or affiliation with exclusive groups or clubs. Power, which we could operationalize as number of direct reports, or annual budget, or share of total business under an individual's control. Let's take a minute to test your understanding. Back to the second question. How do we measure the main concepts? Let's add a formal definition here. Measurement is the process of observing an individual and assigning a numeric value or category to some characteristic of that individual that we are interested in analyzing. We want to carry out this process in a way that lets us compare across individuals. I'm referring to individuals, but remember that the individuals we study could be schools or government agencies or Girl Scout troops, anything that we want to analyze. Then the variable definition is the rule that we use to guide this process. Got that? The variable definition is the rule we use to assign a numeric value or category to a characteristic of an individual. My concept is education. I decide that I want to define the concept of education as how long someone has been affiliated with the educational system. An easy operational definition to guide how we are going to measure and observe education is whether an individual completed high school. Even at this point, I have some options for defining my variable. I have options for the rule that I am going to use to assign a category, in this case, to a characteristic of an individual. I could use graduated from high school at the end of 12th grade, and this excludes GEDs, earned a high school diploma or equivalent, earned a high school diploma or equivalent by age 25. Did you notice? Once again, I have lots of choices. Let's recap. What makes for a good variable definition? It is specific enough that we can collect data on it in a consistent way. It should also include a time frame that the data pertain to, as well as units, categories, or scale. Got it? Take this quick assessment to make sure. We also use constants sometimes, although they are usually not very analytically interesting. A constant is any dimension on which cases do not differ. We'll wrap up this lesson with a final assessment.